Now, India has this company named Hero, which makes more motorcycles and bikes than anywhere else in the world. So they created this on their own. They're very sophisticated, doing very well. We contacted them and said, would you like to pimp your ride with some hydrogen? And they said, sure. How does that work? Instead of electricity full time, you ping it like ringing a bell, and the bell continues to resonate and go wah, 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 wah. And that literally tickles the water into hydrogen and oxygen, as my 7-year-old says, my daughter. Here's what happens. That breaks it apart. And then you have to know with an oscilloscope that sees the sine wave with intelligence when you need to hit it with and how much electricity, amperage, watt, and voltage to keep that breaking down the hydrogen. But now using a lot less electricity to do that, and we're down to 37 degrees Celsius instead of 58 degrees Celsius, which anybody that's a geek would know, wow, that's a huge difference in heat dissipation, so your efficiency went way up. So decentralized power on demand with no rare earth materials that's completely safe, because we take the hydrogen, goes into the combustion chamber, and then it turns it into electricity, which goes into a small battery. And we're using graphene-like batteries that are made of hemp. They're 1,000 times less costly than graphene and outperform them.
And good afternoon. Today I have with me again Tom Ross, Tesnic.com. If you remember, just about 6 months ago, Tom and I had a round of conversation, which was so well received through the forward thinking of how we might bring our world, not only for development in Northern Africa, Central Africa, for the new growth zone moving out in terms of cryptocurrency and on-demand power, because we just won't have the time or the resources, as you see right now with the supply chain lockup across the planet. So the development of Africa to bring that new growing area online as areas such as Russia, Canada, northern parts of the United States, and northern China go offline and have less production coming out due to this grand solar minimum intensifying. Everything's going to have to be rethought, revamped in a very different way to begin and lay out infrastructure that works instantly in a different fashion that we've been used to for the last 70, 80 years. So knowing that with the new magnetic fields coming in, and we're going to have a lot of crustal displacement, and we already have begun to see sand volcanoes erupting, mud volcanoes turning on, earth cracks, an enormous amount of landslides in diverse places, that are modern infrastructure, including pipelines, roads, bridges, highways, not going to survive through all of this. There's going to be a percentage of this that goes down. And if you've ever read John Casey's book, Upheaval, he details exactly what's going to break and in which parts of the nation first. Then we can expand that out onto a global level. So we're going to start to see a lot of delivery bottlenecks and decade-long lockups. So again, we're going to have to think about producing power differently in this grand solar minimum moving forward from this year, especially 2024, as those second magnetic field starts to really, have more of an effect on our Earth. We're going to start to see infrastructure starting to break more in terms of pipelines. And this is where we get our natural gas, water, fuels, etc., electrical power lines snapping from under the earth. What are our options at that point? Well, we can produce it locally. And what have we been fed through the narratives of mainstream? What's a local production of energy for you? Solar panels. We saw how none of that worked in Texas during the time. So what we've been fed in narrative is kind of a fallacy. So let's step outside the box for a moment and think of things that really do work with proven concept, stepping up into the next levels of production and usability. So that's why Tom's back with me today, because as we move forward in this grand solar minimum, we've got two options for on-demand power in a location where your city, your neighborhood, your communities are. We're going to be doing it through hydrogen, or we're going to be doing it through electrogravitics. One of the two. And you just need to wonder why right now the Navy and all the U.S. government's releasing all this info on UFOs and hovering craft and anti-gravity technology. It fits his timeline when we need to come to new production sources. So hydrogen is one that we're going to go for. Remember, Tom and I talked about the hydrogen dirt bikes last time, on-demand hydrogen to run a motorbike. And I brought him back on because I'm really interested to see where they're going in Africa, what projects, because we spoke about that last time, rolling out in Africa for new growth zone, agricultural zones there. Also for transportation, on how we can do on-demand hydrogen for transportation needs, and how the tech itself has evolved into where it might lead in the next 6 months or 1 year on scalability, and then overlapping into maybe retrofitting different cars engines and things that we have, that all we have to do is tweak it a little bit with a couple accessories, and we'd be able to then run existing vehicles on a different source of power. So Tom, I appreciate you coming back on. I know that was a long-winded intro there, but the floor is yours.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for having me back on. And I really appreciate you and your listeners and all the help, because a lot of them help to connect us, a lot of dots. Being connected is really important. A little update since last time. We're in talks with some gentlemen that have already built a motorbike for Africa specifically. It's electric, and they're ex-executives and engineers from Tesla. It's already at the dog and pony stage, so it's well on its way. We're in talks with being able to put our hydrogen technology in there in our toroidal motor, so that you don't have to have gear reduction. You can have up to 90% regen instead of like 10%. So we're looking at putting that in there. I'm in Costa Rica, where they have more clean energy than anywhere else in the world, but it's very expensive compared to their income for electricity, and vehicles are expensive and stuff. So it's a great place for a pilot for us. So I'm sitting here looking at Chiripo, which means eternal waters, a 13,000-foot mountain that if you go on the internet and search, stone spheres. So the most biodiverse, lowest violent crime rate, more super lightning. You got the two biggest bodies of water in the world on both sides, going up and down, with more iron in the ground than anything else. It's just a magical place to connect. And down here, the synchronicities are off the hook. I'm hanging out in Norsara, Santa Teresa, and Jack Dorsey happened to be from Twitter next door. That was so freaky when we were looking to the cryptocurrency guys. And then the next thing that happened is that I go to another place. It's quite a ways from there, Las Catalinas, which is like Monaco. They bought same land space as Monaco here in Costa Rica, and building out their own version of Monaco, but clean energy, that type of stuff. No cars, just walking through the society. So I'm there hanging out, and I'm riding around on one of our bikes, and I'm hanging out with some kids there. And guess what? All of a sudden I end up with a lady that is working for Jack Dorsey specifically to take Twitter and Square and working with cryptocurrency in Africa. She's working directly with Jack Dorsey. So what are the odds of that? There are no odds of that. I just bumped into her. So that was pretty wild. So she's already introduced us at a very high level in government and industry over in Africa. So that's happening already. So it expedited everything. Working with India, there's also a company called SR8. There'll be links down below. They already have a bike for India. Now, India has this company named Hero, which makes more motorcycles and bikes than anywhere else in the world. It's very important that they have something over there. So they created this on their own. They're very sophisticated, doing very well. We contacted them and said, would you like to pimp your ride with some hydrogen? And they said, sure. How does that work? And they're fairly sophisticated, so we had to explain it, which was a linear generator. This crazy stuff happened. Bill Gates invested in linear generators. Interesting. Okay. And then Jeff Bezos leaves his company and heads up this hydrogen company called Plug Power that does $1 billion, a cap raise twice over. That's a lot of money. $80 billion since we spoke last time. $80 billion has gone into investment in hydrogen worldwide. A guy named Joe Biden has decided that it's going to be a hydrogen economy. And everybody around the world is talking about a hydrogen economy. And there's not one country, not one politician, not one businessman that's not talking about hydrogen, except for one, Elon Musk, of course. These guys asked us, how does this work? I said, well, instead of electricity full time, you ping it like ringing a bell, and the bell continues to resonate and go wah, 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 wah. And that literally tickles the water into hydrogen and oxygen, as my 7-year-old says, my daughter. Here's what happens. That breaks it apart. And then you have to know with an oscilloscope that sees the sine wave with intelligence when you need to hit it with and how much electricity, amperage, watt, voltage, to keep that breaking down the hydrogen. But now you're using a lot less electricity to do that. And we're down to 37 degrees Celsius instead of 58 degrees Celsius, which anybody that's a geek would know, wow, that's a huge difference in heat dissipation. So your efficiency went way up. Oh, there's also earmarked another $300 billion in the next 6 months to be able to go into hydrogen. So it's the largest transfer of wealth and the fastest in the world. There's 2 videos out right now. One talks about blue hydrogen, the Tesla killer that's going around. There's one that says it's not going to be and debunks it. And they say fuel cells are for fools. Fuel cells is what they call them, is what Elon calls them, which I agree. Rare earth materials, they don't really work. But a linear generator, because if you take the hydrogen, you instantly put it into a combustion chamber, it goes back and forth and breaks an electric field and then creates electricity with a linear generator, which today, other than us, there is no 100% hydrogen oxygen linear generator in the world because there was no way to create enough hydrogen oxygen. It was too much electricity and you couldn't produce enough volume in a small enough unit. So that's where we are today.
Tom, can I stop you for a second there? So you're talking about the development and moving out forward with this tech. And my question is, are they going to try to string us down the road of half-working, inefficient technologies to get you to buy more materials at a higher price point than actually give you a working solution at the easiest possible bit of mechanical upgrades or add-ons to, say, motors? Because when we look at just so many things that have been given to us or sold to us over the last 80 years, it always seems to be the inefficiency that's sold, not really something that will solve a problem and reduce you off your need and dependency off the corporate teat, if you will. Because I had a conversation with somebody about gasoline mileage in an automobile just the other day. And we were talking about when we were kids 40 years ago, when we would still get 20, 22, 23 miles to the gallon. You're like, wow, that was okay. But then today, still pickup trucks and SUVs, et cetera, get that or even a little bit less. There's really been no giant jumps in fuel efficiency that have taken us into the 80, 100, 200 miles per gallon range. And you have to ask yourself, why after 70 years have we not gone there? So if it's the same companies that are going to be working with hydrogen, giving us new devices to get us off of fossil fuels into hydrogen, are they going to give us something that actually works, or is it going to be a substandard level 2 or 3 product that it'll work, but it'll just barely get you by, and it'll still be incredibly reliant? You know, they're talking about tanks and storage and fuel cells and refill and versus on-demand linear motors where you produce it on site, burn it right then. I think, the question I'm asking.
You're absolutely bang on. What's happened here is that they're going to use the same thing, right? Transport and storage. So there's a billing system and a place for you to go to, right? The salt lick. At the end of the day, what's happening here is that we're making it on demand and pulling moisture out of the air through condensation from the exhaust that comes off of this. And it works. It's backward compatible with existing combustion engines as well. We have over 1 million road miles, $60 million into this with transport trucks with 0 failures over 12 years from the Arctic all the way to the desert. So the first step is you can put this on, reduce your emissions by 50%, your fuel consumption by 20%. And you could with diesels and stuff, and even the gasoline, use like hempylene and ethanol, which is much better for your engine and less maintenance and more performance. The high fuel dragsters are all alcohol based. When you look into this, you could run your vehicles on hempylene and hydrogen and some, oils if you want, if it's a diesel type stuff. You'd have what you need. The challenge is that when you do transport and storage, 50% is lost. What's electricity coming to you or the oil? Because there's a cost to all of that. So with this, you're making it on demand, taking moisture out of the air, and the business model, we're open source, it's a foundation, we're on Endless-Sphere. We make money from the integration, the customization, the training, the support, the analytics of the Internet of Things through the oscilloscope, listening to what's going on for the energy consumption and understanding proactively what failure rates could be and selling the information to other people. Think of like the Android, what Android is to targeted advertising. We are the analytics of the Internet of Things because of the oscilloscope being part of this and listening to what's going on. We can tell customers, because we understand from the sine wave that's coming out of these controllers, how far down your tires have worn, the drive belt, the chain, the brakes, all of these different things, the motor, the battery. We can tell because there's certain characteristics to those sine waves that'll tell us that you need to ramp up a line to be able to build these certain parts because you're going to need them because these people are going to have failures, which is extremely valuable. So our business model is not centralized, it's decentralized. So decentralized power on demand with no rare earth materials that's completely safe because we take the hydrogen, goes into the combustion chamber, and then it turns it into electricity, which goes into a small battery. And we're using graphene-like batteries that are made of hemp. They're 1,000 times less costly than graphene and outperform them. So there's all these things we're putting in. We're just taking the best of breed, best of fit, and putting all this type of stuff together. So that's where we're at today. And for cryptocurrency, Luckily, somebody heard your stuff and was talking to us, and all of a sudden we're talking to a guy that runs a hedge fund for cryptocurrency for $500 million. So now we have one of the best guys in the world to make our cryptocurrency that's backed by hydrogen, be able to price the US dollar, OPEC. And we're not swimming upstream because the largest consumers of hydrogen on the planet is the oil companies. To make all the products that you have today, they're the largest consumer of hydrogen in the world. So they need it. My belief, my theory, my idea, my feeling is that the oil industry went, this COVID stuff really sucks. You know, it's the particulates in the air and the radiation that's bringing people's immune systems down that's causing the situation. They're not consuming oil. This is affecting our bottom line. You know what? If we just used hydrogen, they could stay healthy and we can still sell them stuff at the pump. Let's do that. You're right. It's the same old game. So now people want a new narrative. That's why I'm here in Costa Rica, you know, next to a town called Good Air, Costa Rica, Buenos Aires, and working with indigenous down here because point of acceptance, regulating stuff and taxation and securities on native reserve. That's why they have all the casinos there. You don't have the regulatory issues. You don't have the taxation issues. As long as the IP and the MAC address terminates on that piece of property, longitude and latitude on a native reserve, you're good. This is where all the cryptocurrency guys are going. They're all going to where the lava is already cooled and they don't want to be on the lava. Imagine taking a helicopter and a plane and going, or from a boat, from native reserve to native reserve all over the world and never having to touch the lava, as I call it, the rest of the world that's burning up. I'm sure that the cooling effect that you keep talking about will actually cool the lava eventually, but until that stuff cools, I don't want to touch those jurisdictions, if you catch my drift.
I do. So let me stop you for a second on jurisdiction. You hit that key word right there. It seems that things are put back into play after they're taken off the table when it behooves the power elite to bring them back on the table, and hemp being one of them. So you're talking about these graphene-like batteries made from hemp. Think about how long hemp has been demonized since the 1930s. It started with the Reefer Madness movies, but at that point, it was in direct competition with, let me see, the emerging plastics industry, the home building industry that was, pillaging the forests when we could have made lumber and different types of, more simpler 2x4s and building materials from hemp, cotton, motor fuels itself from the oil production from the hemp seed itself, plus the protein, which was another interference from the ag industry. But wait, you needed to sell them all the petrochemicals to grow the food that you were going to eat instead of getting it from a protein source without chemical. There were 5 or 6 direct interference, large industries emerging at that time from one single plant. They took it offline and put you in prison longer for having a pound of that plant than if you killed another human being, which made no sense to me. But now suddenly hemp's back on the table and they're encouraging farmers all over the place to grow it. What was the narrative shift where they're going to need such an enormous amount of hemp in which industry that they wanted farmers to now shift? I understand the legalizations to keep a lot of people numb and not thinking about the situational problems around them. A lot of GM strains of, consumables out there that might affect the mind versus something that's a non-GM strain. But the hemp itself, why is there such a push now globally to get farmers into hemp unless there's going to be a need for it? And it's not just a lot of people making clothes and, let's say sustainable gear and, wear and whatnot. It's got to come to the industry level. So, you're already seeing something on the industry level that's going to consume large amounts of hemp to the point where we're going to have to convert a huge amount of ag on the planet to sustain that need. It's another narrative thing back on the table, back in play. So what else are you seeing coming back in play right now, things that have been off the table for such a long time in terms of legalities?
Well, there was a gentleman named Henry Ford that made a few cars. If you go Google this, instead of going into it for a long time here, he made cars for 1/4 the cost of everybody else that was superior. He paid his people twice as much. And he definitely made cars out of hemp. And he definitely made hempoline. Hempoline is the only carbon neutral biofuel in the world. And it's the best thing to be able to make fuel, to be able to go into a combustion engine, by far. So Henry Ford, guess what his father was? He was a hemp farmer. How did he make a car for 1/4 the cost and pay people twice as much? He made hemp cars. We have a guy on our team that made a crash testable 4-door sedan that weighs 1,200 pounds less that was electric 10 years ago that got crushed. Nathan, he's on our team. But now it's all coming back. It's in vogue. But they put prohibition in place and got a lot of women upset with their drunk husbands. But it wasn't about that. It was about making sure that Henry Ford didn't give you a still and say, go make your own hempoline for your car. this is real. Talk to people that are around that are, my grandfather and grandmother were into their 90s before they passed away. They told us about this. We made our own fuel for our own vehicles until that prohibition thing came around. We weren't alcoholics. We just lived on the farm, and there was no gas station in our town, so we made hempoline. They're now figuring they can control the source of that because they're legalizing it, just like they did alcohol for you to drink. So just like the hydrogen, they're going to make transport and storage, and they're going to control the substances. The permits are ridiculously expensive. We're going to replace the Federal Reserve with a native reserve.
And you see a lot, again, crypto's on the table, but it's off the table. The legislation's here, and what do we see? Turkey now just banned it outright. India's done the same. So you get all these different diametric opposites from different governmental bodies around the world. It's the way of the future. Oh, no, you can't have it because it interferes with central banking. Too much capital outflow into crypto. Oh, no, we need it because it's decentralized and we can pay workers across, for example, Northern Africa. A stable coin for Northern Africa, probably running off of USDC based on Algorand as a protocol, something like this. But then, that only comes to the payment aspect of it. And these mixed messaging from the allowability of crypto because it interferes with central banking. They're almost like, we're doing you a favor by allowing you to have it out there in the wild. So where does it go from here with crypto, do you think, with protocols that are out there? And how do they dovetail into each other, building out infrastructure across part of a continent from nothing, from zero to production?
Well, the world woke up as soon as somebody changed sides. Elon Musk, when he said cryptocurrency wasn't real. And then one day, Tesla bought $1.5 billion worth of Bitcoin. And that's when everybody went, whoa, wait a minute. What'd you do that for? Well, what they're doing with printing more money. We have to hedge our bets, they said. So quietly in the background, all the banks are adopting it. All the financial institutions are adopting it. So the wise ones they make it illegal first, then they make it legal. They're just trying to shift the sands back and forth to create the dunes that they want to be able to, launch from. So that's all this is. It's just a big monopoly game. That's all it is. Cryptocurrency is definitely here to stay. It's definitely here to stay. But it'll be in a physical format, especially in Africa, based on the people I'm talking to at a very high level. It'll be in a physical format. It's not just going to be ones and zeros. If anybody's tracking this, and you're not, you should read up on history to see where we're going. Because a lot of people don't know where here is. They want to know where there is. They know where there is. They know where they want to be, but they don't know where here is. And you can't get there from here because you don't know where here is. Outwitting the Devil by Napoleon Hill, a little appetizer in 30 seconds or less is he puts the devil on the stand and he asks him questions the devil has to answer truthfully. You find out, if the devil was to come here, what would he do? He'd set up his tent as a church. It tells you all about science, religion, mythology, history, how to run a human being, politics, everything in 4 hours. It tells you, it's the Reader's Digest version, the Cole's notes on how to be able to understand how this gamified realm is. The speed of light and all these limits that make sure that you understand that really this is just consciousness. Everything here is just collective consciousness. There's nothing else but consciousness. The Big Bang, you cannot create or destroy, but you can only... But wait a minute, we cannot create or destroy. Then what about the Big Bang? That's contrary. Not if it's consciousness. Not if it's just one mind that created all this. So anyway, that's a whole nother rabbit hole. But there's many, many things like the speed of light, a limit. There's all these different things that just kind of go, wait a minute, this is something we're living inside. So anyway.
I've recently been into spinning things, as in torsion, and the way that limits are defied when things spin. And I'm just really fascinated that there hasn't been a study devoted to spinning objects from the atom to the molecule to the solar system and spiral galaxies. Everything spins, but nobody really focuses on the spin except torsion physicists. And you get a different outcome and a different result based on the spin. And if you can harness the spin, then we have a whole new set of, free power. What do you mean? Harnessing the spin of everything, and nobody ever talks about it. There's such defined limits on what's possible, not possible. And they always come up with these, that's not possible. You're defying the laws of physics. Well, spinning objects defy the law of physics too. It could be the same object. Newton says things fall at the same speed, but spin one and see which one goes further trajectory wise. Yeah, there's a lot of things that have been put limits artificially, so you don't want to step outside that limit. So walk me through this crypto-based hydrogen protocol that you're talking about here? Am I calling it a crypto-backed? I mean, give me the right lexicon to term this hybrid that we're moving into using cryptocurrency-backed hydrogen production or something in that light, because there are a lot of people that are hearing this for the first time or, wow, what is this conversation? This thing is mind blowing and want to know more about, because there's so many people now just feeling the edges of cryptocurrency because they've been warned off of it for, 5-6 years now from the mainstream media, like, oh, it's a scam, it's a this, it's a that. And now suddenly there's huge mass global adoption. Like, this thing's for real. It just crossed 60. All governments are getting into it. All the hedge funds are there. Like you say, banks are there, here, there, and everywhere. Now people are going, all right, we've been kind of lied to for the last 5-6 years. Now we need to really catch up and understand what this tech is beyond the blockchain itself, but the linking of properties to it, information to it, energy to it, and smart contracts to it, and then protocol. So walk me through it. How does hydrogen blend into this cryptocurrency? And like you talk about the endpoint, I know where we are sitting right now. We have blockchain-based autonomous running smart contracts that can link any physical good, anything in the web. It could be a piece of information, a PDF, a block signed contract, whatever it is, literally, to the real world. So we're in the blend somewhere in the middle. So walk me through the hydrogen connected to the crypto.
This cryptocurrency transacts in less than a second for less than 1 penny. It's a browser-based. It's as easy as an email transfer. It costs less and takes less time. So to contact us at tesnic.com, that's the best way to talk. And Endless Sphere if you're into the technology side of stuff. And we'll be working to do stuff up. And the ISP that we're working with here, Redcom, they're providing free internet to the indigenous. And we're going to put internet throughout the vehicles and the drones up in the air that'll be using hydrogen and hempoline. And